Good morning again, and when pigs fly, right? So that's what we're looking at the next 4 weeks. So you will want to come do you believe in miracles, and do you believe that God can still do miracles? There are going to be some things that we're going to be talking about here at Salem Grace over the next several weeks, but just wanted to make sure that you're invited to that and invite your friends. And I know there's a lot of people that need miracles in their lives right now, and we're going to be talking about some of those things. I personally still believe in miracles. I still believe God can do miracles in our lives, and so I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited about that message series that we're going to be starting here next week. But this week we are finishing up Neighbors. Who in here would say, I have been a good neighbor? 1, 2, we got 5 people, 6, 8, 10. We're making some progress. There may be more than that, actually. So hopefully you have been challenged to be a good neighbor and what that looks like. And we've, over the past, if you're just joining us here this morning for the first time, or if you're watching online, or you are watching somewhere else, and just joining us for the first time, we have been talking about what it means to be a good neighbor, and really went through the great commandment, which Jesus told us to love our neighbors as ourselves, love the Lord the God, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And so we've looked at that over the past several weeks, and I hopefully you have been taking some of the challenges. I've been hearing, some people that have told me that they've been taking the challenges that I've laid down seriously. Some people have actually gone out and done some things this week that I've just been impressed by, on how they're reaching out to be a good neighbor to people in our community. And hopefully you've done some of that. Hopefully you've taken time to meet. Has anybody met anybody new at church in the past 4 weeks? Anybody? Okay, a few people. All right, there's still time. Today's not over, so there's still time for you to meet somebody new at church and put yourself out there. We talked week 1 about really making room for life. Anybody, hopefully you've made room for life this summer, and we get really busy this time of year. And, Cheryl and I took a Jeep ride out yesterday. It was a beautiful evening, and so we thought we'd take a Jeep ride out. And Cheryl's like, hey, let's go out to Forbes. So we drove around Forbes Lake, and it was just beautiful, and the sunset was just amazing. You look at that and the richness of God, and then we decided to kind of drive through the camping area, and I have never seen a mass of humanity like I saw at Forbes camping area. I mean, it was just insane. Like everybody, I don't get that. It literally looked like the entire town of Salem had packed up and moved to camp at Salem Forbes right out there. It was like campers on top of campers, and I even saw one guy put his toothbrush out the window to the next camper and say, hey, I'm a little short, can you give me some? No, just it's just that close. I seriously, I'm not kidding you. I didn't think that anybody would be here today. I thought you guys were all at Forbes camping. But it was, but it's that time of year when we start doing things and we make room for life. And I've just had this heavy on my heart, and we were talking about it this morning, just even with the band before the service, that if one person, if we all would just be a fraction, maybe 1% more intentional about getting to know people around us and building relationships. Not necessarily that you smack them in the head with the Bible, but that you just build a relationship that's outside of maybe your original friend circle, your family circle, that you do something, that you step just one step into the uncomfortable and make that step on being a good neighbor. I just can't imagine what kind of ripple effect that would have in our community. If people just began to befriend people, and then ultimately maybe you have an opportunity to invite them to church or to share Jesus with them, and then to be part of their story is just an amazing thing. But we talked about the heart of Jesus. Anybody pray for the heart of Jesus this week? I know I have. I've prayed that God would give me the heart of Jesus, that I would see people like he sees them. And so this week I want to talk to you about something else. It's a pretty common parable, and we're going to talk about that. It's Memorial Day weekend, and as we remember those that we've lost and passed on, I couldn't help but realize that I just celebrated a birthday. And the more of those that I celebrate, the more I realize, I saw a quote this week. It says, I can't believe how old people my age are. You ever do that? Like, you ever flip through Facebook and go, look, oh my word, you look old, dude. And it's people that you graduated high school with. Have you ever done that? Has anybody ever done that? Like I'll show the picture to my kids. I'm like, hey, how old do you think that guy is? And he's like, I don't know, like 80. And I'm like, thank you. I'm not that old. But I do. I flip through that and see some of my high school friends. I'm like, man, you guys look old. I'm glad I don't look that old. But then I'm constantly to have people like recently. It just happened last night. Someone's like, man, Trent, you're starting to get a little bit of gray up there. I'm like, thanks. Thanks for noticing. Appreciate that. Appreciate you calling that out. But in my mind, I'm still in my 20s, okay, maybe 30s. But I think I've aged well. But anyway, and I don't want to depress anybody, but the older I get, the more I realize how short our lives are here. Does that ever dawn on you? Like this morning, no kidding, this morning I woke up and I thought, man, if I live to be as old as I am now, I'm going to be over 100. That's I'll be close to 100. That's crazy, It's just, it's just short how time it goes. And then Psalms chapter 90, I read this verse this week. It says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And I started thinking about that. I started thinking, man, it's really important for us to number our days. Some of you, some of us have more than others that are left. But when you number your days, and it's kind of depressing, really. But it gives us a heart of wisdom. And I started thinking about that heart of wisdom. What is a heart of wisdom? What's that look like? And I think what it looks like is you begin to value things that are important. When we number our days, we begin to focus on the time you have left. And for me, I want to make it count. I want to make a mark. I want to leave a mark. I want to do something. I want to be the kind of dad to my kids. I want to value the time that I have left. I want to value that because I believe once we get to heaven, I've always heard this saying, and you've probably heard it too, but people will say, when you get to heaven, you're going to wish you had done more. And I believe that. I believe that when I get there and see God in all of his glory and meet Jesus face to face, that I'm going to go, man, could I get a do-over? Because I would do this so much better the second time around. And so I value that, and I started thinking about that, and so since I'm the pastor and nobody really tells me what to say up here, I wanted to honor, and on Memorial Day, I want to honor my dad. And I wanted to, some of you know my dad. Obviously, he pastored here for a long time, and some of you may not have ever seen my dad, or met him. But that's my dad. Was a pastor here for a long time, and passed away a year ago in March of this year. And so, but I wanted to show you that picture. But I brought a couple pictures, and really, the second picture is my dad also, and that's it. Some of you know what that is. Travis, you've probably seen one of those before. But if you don't know what that is, that's a spreader. It's a seed spreader. And probably a great picture of my dad because he spread seed everywhere he went. And so I want to spend them today talking about a familiar parable that Jesus talked about in Matthew. And the only difference between my dad and that last model that you saw there was he had a motor. That one didn't. That one he had to push it. He wasn't self-propelled. He was propelled by the power of the Holy Spirit living in him. And you could actually, and you see, he actually prayed that prayer to give me a heart like Jesus. Every morning, 5 a.m., my dad would get up and pray that prayer. Give me a heart like Jesus. And it made a difference in his daily life. It made a difference on what kind of a person he was. It made a difference on the people he shared Jesus with. He grew up in a horrible childhood and abusive family and, alcoholic dad, and found Jesus when he was 18 years old, and it changed his life. And it made him into a seed spreader. And really, it's really the focus of the parable that I want to share with you. Jesus was talking to a group of people, and it's a very familiar parable in the Bible, parable of the sower. Some of you have heard it 1,000,000 times if you've been around the church. You've heard this parable probably, I don't know, I've heard it tons. But it's in Matthew chapter 13, the Matthew's version. There's also, you can find it in Luke, but I want to focus on the version in Matthew chapter 13, verse 3 through 9. And this is pretty much it. This is the parable that Jesus was telling to this group of people. And he said, in verse 3, it says, he told many stories in the form of parables. In other words, Jesus, when he was talking to a crowd, everybody likes a good story, so he would just tell a story, and it made sense to people. It says in verse 3, he told many stories in the form of parables, such as this one. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across his field, some seeds fell on the footpath, and the birds came and ate them. The other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plants soon wilted under the hot sun, and since they didn't have deep roots, they died. But the other seeds fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Heard that before, right? Some of us, maybe that's the first time you've ever heard that story. And I think there are 3 things that we can do if we really want to be a good neighbor and get this right. And the first step of our journey to be a good neighbor and do all the things that I've talked about for the past 3 weeks, the first step of that, before we can be a good neighbor and before we can make room for life and before we can, pray that prayer and do things, I think the very first thing you have to do is determine what kind of soil you are. Because he lists 4 different types of soil in that parable. 4 different types of soil that seeds are scattered on and planted. And so I think the very first thing that you can do for any of us here is determine what kind of soil you are. What kind of soil are you? In other words, the soil of you. Now, there are some people here with small children, and some of you have reached an age where the phrase, the soil of you, creates a whole different image. I don't want to go there, okay? I don't want to go there. But according to Jesus, there are 4 types. There are 4 types of soil. There are footpaths, rocks, thorns, and good black dirt. The seed, let's take a look at the first one. The seed that fell in Luke, the seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. Then, because see what happened was Jesus told this parable, and then he would retreat into with his disciples and explain what the parable meant to the disciples. And so in this passage of scripture is where Jesus is explaining what each one of these types of soil are. So the first type of soil is a footpath. And so as we go through these, I want you to be thinking individually, am I this type of soil? Does this define me? Is this the soil of Trent Ice? Is this the soil of you? Footpaths. It's the seed that fell on the footpath. Got a footpath? I got one in my yard. I've talked about it before. It goes from my garage door to the pool, to the backyard. It's a little footpath. My dogs walk it. I tried to grow grass. I'm trying to grow grass on it this year, but to no avail. It's just a little footpath, because every time the dogs go out, they walk in the same little path. It's this little footpath. The seed that fell on the footpath represents those that hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. Then the evil one comes and snatches the seed away that was planted in their hearts. And I think some of us here, probably some of you in a congregation this size, there are some of you that are probably here this morning that fit this bill. Your footpath soil. You're still struggling to believe. You've heard it. You don't really understand it. A lot of stuff that we talk about here on Sunday morning, you're like, man, I don't understand that. I don't get the Bible. I try to read it. I don't understand it. It makes absolutely 0 sense to me. I try to read it like a book, which it's not. It's a collection of books. It's a collection of letters. And I think what you have to do is we have to come to the place where we believe that what God said is true. It's not some magic prayer that you say one time. It's not an event. But it's belief in our heart. God credited to Abraham righteousness from this belief. Long before the Ten Commandments, long before there were any rules, Abraham was made right in God's sight because he believed what God said. So the question you have to ask yourself, if you're a foot past soil, is do I really believe what God has said? Do I believe this thing of religion and church and Jesus, and do I believe the Bible? Do I understand it? Do I believe what it says? In my heart, do I believe it? And so that's the first test. And some of you are like, yeah, I'm good there, Trent. I believe this. I believe with all my heart that God, so probably you can check that one off. Maybe you're not foot past soil, but some of you may be foot past soil. Maybe you're still struggling with that. Second type of soil is rocky. I think this one talks to our consistency. Some of us just aren't very consistent in our walk with Christ. And I think that's what this rocky soil describes. It says the seed, in verse 20 of Luke, it says the seed that fell on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy. You've come at one point in time, you've had that moment of salvation where you said, yes, I want to be a believer. I receive this with joy. I'm excited about this. I believe in my heart that I've asked for forgiveness. Yes, I want this. In verse 21, it says, but since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing in God's word. I see this a lot. I see it every year at Big Stuff. We have high school kids. So you just seen it. We've seen it. We have high school kids that go to Big Stuff. They have this mountaintop experience. They experience Jesus. They experience the power of the Holy Spirit. They experience something awesome. They come back and they receive it with joy and they get baptized. And then 2 seconds later, they're gone. Because it's rocky soil. Is that you? Have you received it with joy at some point in time? But then, it's not deep enough. This one speaks to our consistency, our faithfulness. Some of you had an experience like that. So the question is, are you rocky soil? Am I rocky soil? This is what I want you to be asking yourself. Am I foot past soil? No, I believe. Am I rocky soil? Yeah, maybe. Maybe I've come, but my consistency and my faith with Christ is just pretty scarce. The third one is thorny soil. I think this is just contentment, and this one speaks to our busyness of life. The seed that fell among the thorns represents those who hear God's word, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth, so no fruit is produced. The seed that fell among the thorny soil, it represents, you hear God's word, you come to church, you hear God's word, you make a commitment, but Monday morning you go back to work and you lose everything. In the sea of busyness, in baseball games and work and car trouble and this and that and all the thorns that come up around us in life, financial pressures and relationship issues and marriage issues and issues with our kids and issues with everything else that creeps up and starts to choke out this relationship that you have with Jesus Christ. You just don't give any thought to it. You don't think about your relationship. I think these people that are in thorny soil, if you're thorny soil, you don't think of your relationship any other day but Sunday, maybe when you're here. The rest of the week, it gets choked and drowned out by everything else in your life. We get so consumed with other things, the allure of more stuff, and so we work more. Worries of life that have extinguished a flame of any kind of spark that we once had in our relationship with Jesus Christ. That's why I talked about in week 1, eliminating something. What have you eliminated? Are you eliminating stuff that is choking out your relationship with Jesus Christ? Are you thorny soil? And then the last one, So I don't know where you're at on your little checklist. You know, in my footpath soil, I'm just struggling to believe. In my rocky soil, I'm just grossly inconsistent. In my thorny soil, I get so consumed with other junk that it just gets choked out. Or are you fertile soil? This is what we all want to be, right? We all want to be this good black dirt, don't we? It says the seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60, or even 100 times as much has been planted. I think that some of us think we're fertile soil, but we're probably not. I think we want to be fertile soil in our hearts, but are you really fertile soil? It's pretty easy to tell because Scripture tells us how we can tell if we're fertile soil. Because if we are fertile soil, we are producing 30, 60, 100 times of what we've planted. So in spiritual realms, in spiritual speaking, in your relationship with Christ, I think in order to determine if you're fertile soil, you have to ask yourself, what am I planting? Are you planting anything? And then what kind of harvest are you seeing in your life personally? I know this is a tough message. This is challenging. I intend it to be. I think some of us think that because we've served Christ faithfully in our lives and we've not done bad things and we go to church every Sunday that we're fertile soil. Is your soil producing a harvest? Is it? It's pretty easy to tell. Do you have people that are standing up and being baptized and saying, hey, if it wasn't for this person pouring into my life, or can you think of people that you've led to Christ? Can you think of anybody that would say they're a follower of Jesus Christ because of you? Because of something that you planted in their life, some commitment that you've made to be a part of their life and to walk with them and sacrifice and be there for them. I had to preach to myself. You know, I was thinking about this and I sent my notes to Kathy, and Kathy was like, you know, it's the first time that being called dirt's a good thing. I want to be called dirt. I want to be dirt. I want to be treated like dirt. It's the greatest compliment ever. I'm going to get a new t-shirt that says, I want to be treated like dirt. Good, black, fertile dirt that reaps a harvest. So that's the first step, is determining what kind of soil are you. I think before we do anything else, you have to determine what kind of soil you are. I think the second thing, if we're going to be good neighbors, once we figure out what kind of dirt we are, we got to fix that. But there's a concept, you know, most of this parable is really talking about the soil. But there's another element to this. And it's the seed thrower. And in this parable, it's actually Jesus. But I wonder if we can become seed throwers. Trying to grow grass in my yard right now. My kids park in my yard a lot. It's not pretty. I need your help, Travis. But I planted this garden too, and I've got this grass. It's actually growing. Some of it's coming up. But when I was seeding, I tilled up a couple areas in my yard that I have trouble growing grass in this spring. And when I know I should do that in the fall. But anyway, when I was throwing the seed, I just threw it. I just threw it everywhere. I slung it everywhere. And in this parable, most of the focus is obviously on the soil, but here's the thing. We will never become effective seed throwers by sitting in the farmhouse we call church. Do you understand that? At some point in time, we, as followers of Jesus Christ, each one of you, at some point in time, we have to find a way to get into the field. Wherever that is. Is that at work? Is it at school? Is it among your social friends outside of here? Where is your field? And what are you sowing? You know, I think good seed throwers, they're not discouraged or deterred from the mission to plant the seed. I was undeterred. I was going to get that planted this spring, but it killed me. It's interesting to me that when you read through this parable, people that were listening but completely didn't understand, and Jesus was fulfilling a prophecy of Isaiah that said in Matthew 13:1, it says, "For the hearts of these people are hardened." This was Jesus talking to his disciples. Really, really important part of this parable. "For the hearts of these people are hardened, and their ears cannot hear, and they have closed their eyes, so their eyes cannot see, and their ears cannot heal, and their hearts cannot understand, and they cannot turn to me and let me heal them." Does that describe you? And I think sometimes when you're a seed thrower, and because some of you may be sitting here saying, "Well, you don't know the people I work with, Trent." They don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear about Jesus. They don't want to be my friend. You don't understand. These people are so lost that they could care less about that. Maybe so, but what are you doing to build a relationship with those people? Because I think sometimes, I think for some believers, for us, we don't want to waste our time. I struggle with this honestly too. I mean, we've been doing Youth Loop for years, probably 5 years, probably 5 or 6 years, and we talked to a bunch of high school students on Wednesday nights. And a lot of the kids that were at my house that I have poured into, and I have shared Jesus with them, and I have tried everything within my power to give, a lot of those kids are messed up today. They're avid drug users. They have meth addictions. They have issues with, they've had immoral sex, and they're carrying baggage around broken relationships and all kinds of garbage. And I have continued to pour, but here's the thing. I believe at some point in time I planted a seed there, and I'm expecting a harvest. Yeah, I think for some believers, we say, why are we wasting our time? We start to count the seed as if we need to save it. We save our resources. We don't want to pour resources into that. It's making no difference. There's a lot of times I stand up on Youth Loop and I feel like I make zero difference. But it's not going to keep me from throwing seed. It's not going to keep me from throwing seed here. For those of us that believe and hear this message, how do we become good seed throwers? What makes us a good seed thrower? And I think that a good seed thrower spares no expense. They just throw seed everywhere. Everywhere they go. I had to believe in this story that the seed thrower knew that some of that seed was going to fall in the thorny ground. Some of that seed was going to fall on the footpath. Some of that seed was going to fall on the rocky path. But he wasn't going to I'm not going to throw it there because it's not going to grow anyway. Nope. He's chucking it. He just keeps chucking it. A good seed sower is relentless in planting. He has hope that seed will grow. He recognizes that all of it won't, but he isn't discouraged from sowing it. He anticipates a harvest. So the question we ask ourselves is, am I throwing seed at all? Where am I throwing it? Am I expecting a harvest? If we're not sowing it regularly, we have to ask ourselves why. And I think honestly, why we don't throw seed everywhere we go is probably because of fear. I believe that fear may be the reason. Or we're afraid that we don't know the Bible well enough. We're afraid that we're going to make people feel uncomfortable or awkward. We're afraid of getting made fun of. We're afraid of losing friends. We're afraid of getting dirty. Some of us are afraid of if we actually hang out with people that are messed up, that somehow they're going to get us dirty. I believe that faith is greater than fear. And I believe fear can keep us from being good seed throwers. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but power, love, and self-discipline." I'm going to ask the band to come up. I think in many ways, neighboring, if you want to be a good neighbor and seed thrower, a lot of times it's scarier actually than going on a mission trip, I believe. I think when you're neighboring your friends or neighboring people that you work with is so much more scarier than getting on a plane and flying to Timbuktu to minister to some people that you will never see again. You see these people every single day. So I think in a lot of ways it's scarier, people that we know. I think our culture has become naturally suspicious and fearful of people we don't know. We have phrases like good fences make good neighbors. We have a tendency to desire safe and clean environments, and when this is lived out, it leads us to isolation. Jesus has called us to engage in the messiness of relationships. And if you don't believe relationships are messy, take a look at your own family. Jesus often made religious people uncomfortable because the people that he spent the most time with were messed up people. When was the last time you were accused of being friends with sketchy people? The issue of neighboring will confront many things in our life if we take it seriously. It will determine how we spend our money. It will determine how we view our things and our stuff. And it will cause us to confront our fears. So this morning, as I wrap this neighboring thing up, I'll give you one more challenge. I don't know what kind of soil you are. I don't pretend to know that. It's not really important for me to know that. It's important for you to know that. Some of you may need to say, am I really somebody that's in the audience that Jesus had that have hardened our hearts? We don't have eyes to see. We don't have ears to hear. You're sitting there this morning right now looking at me like, yeah, man, just shut up and get us out of here. I'm just going to challenge you this morning. What kind of soil are you? And what kind of seed are you throwing? Are you a good seed thrower? I'm going to challenge you to do that. This week, I've challenged you to do a lot of things over the past 4 weeks. I don't know how many of them. I'm going to ask you guys to stand. I don't know how many of you have taken it seriously. Challenge you to eliminate something in your life that's choking out your relationship with Jesus Christ. Asking you to carve out some time for Jesus on a regular basis. Carve it out. Introduce yourself to someone. Here, start here. It's church. Pray for a heart like Jesus. And the last thing I will challenge you to do in this message series is just to sow some seed. Sow some seed. And expect a harvest. I'm expecting a harvest. It's happened already. There were some of those kids that I've poured into over those years of Youth Loop, and they've done all kinds of crazy stuff. You know what's happening now? Is they're starting to come back to me. And they're saying, you know what? And I've had an opportunity to pray with some of those kids and watch them start to grow in their relationship. You never have any idea what kind of seed that you can plant and what kind of harvest you will reap. But I'm telling you what, I'm expecting 30, 60, 100 times more than I planned. That's what I'm expecting, because that's what God's scripture tells us we can do. So take that challenge with you this week. I'm going to pray for you this morning, and we're going to go. I don't know where you're at this morning. I'm just want everybody to bow their heads. I wasn't sure really, honestly, just where I was going to go at the end of this. But I just feel checked that there may be somebody here that says, you know what, Trent, I'm the wrong kind of soil. Before I could ever think about becoming a good neighbor, I need to do some soil work. And maybe that's you this morning. And if that's you, just pray this prayer. Father, forgive me for my hard heart. Forgive me for being rocky or thorny or footpath soil. Father, cultivate my life into fertile soil. Make me someone that you can use. Create an opportunity for me this week, Lord Jesus, to spread some seed. And if that's you, if you just prayed that prayer, just slip your hand up. Nobody's looking. Just slip it up. Yep. Should be all of us. Father, thank you so much for what your scripture teaches us. Thank you, Lord, for the challenge that your scripture puts on our hearts. And Lord, sometimes it makes us feel guilty and it makes us feel like we could be better. But I just pray, Lord, that, Father, that you would be at the centerpiece of our life. Father, that you would begin to cultivate our lives, that you would make us into good seed throwers. Give us hearts like Jesus, to see people the way that you see them. Father, help us to build those relationships, create those opportunities, Lord, those moments when we can be obedient and we can begin to build relationships with people that don't know you. All for the sake that someday, maybe, we can invite them to church, or we'll have an opportunity ourselves to share the love of Jesus Christ to them. Thank you for this country that we live in, Lord, for the freedoms that we enjoy that enable us to speak your name freely, for those that have sacrificed for that privilege. God, we're so grateful and thankful for that. I ask that you would just go with us, Lord. Challenge us this week and help us to continue to be seed throwers. Father, we pray for the needs that are represented here at this altar. We pray for the needs that are represented in our church. I know there are people here that are hurting, that are struggling with issues, physical things, Lord, financial things, relationship things, issues with their kids and children. Lord, I just ask that you would just be in each and every one of those circumstances. Take us from this place, Father, this morning, and make us more like you. In your precious holy name.